I think it's sort of defined in the mission of social capital, which is that I believe in an even starting line. I think that's probably the simplest encapsulation of my belief in how the world should work, which is that, we should all effectively get access to the same resources, and that as many of us as possible should be allowed to get to the starting line, and then the gun should fire, and then the outcomes will be what the outcomes will be. And I think a lot of us feel that that isn't necessarily always the case, that there's kind of entrenched hierarchies that prevent progress. So I push against those because they touch a very deep emotional part of my value system. And I just don't think that the world is a better place for them. And I think we're better off without them. I think what GameStop showed was the narrative fallacy on Wall Street. I think for years, there was these folks that sort of, were these wizards behind the veil. And they had a way of conducting themselves that purported to be just intellectually superior to everybody else. But in reality, what that short showed was that they were prone to the same, poor decision-making and broken systems and technologies that everybody else has to deal with. And so I found that kind of funny. I think it also spoke to the fact that, we really haven't looked closely enough at the systems that were broken as a result of 1998 and LTCM, long-term capital management, then 2006, 7, and 8 with Bear and Lehman. And we're allowing the same problem, slightly different, but roughly the same problem, to repeat itself over and over again. And so that's what sort of angered me about GameStop. And then on the back end of it, I just felt like these two worlds collided in a way where I doubt that in the end, in the final analysis, there was any collusion of any kind. But just the stench of this whole thing just goes to show you, back to where we were talking about before, about how difficult it is for normal, everyday folks to have access to any kind of return. So if we break down the capitalist philosophy, they are just fundamentally stuck in this cul-de-sac of always being labor and always being sort of at the, ownership of capital, of the ownership class. And the fact that normal folks can't get access to returns and, close the inequality gap is just going to make all of the things we're dealing with today a lot worse than they already are.
Where do you stand on hedge funds as a group of actors and the role they play in modern finance? And also the other thing that came up in the context of this situation, short selling.
I think hedge funds are a really important part of the financial infrastructure, and I think that they should exist, and I hope that, the ones that are good can thrive. But I also believe that disclosure needs to get improved. I think in every other part of society, as the internet has become more sophisticated, as software has become more sophisticated, things have erred towards real-time disclosure of everything in every market. It's just not true in finance, where people are able to sort of use the rules and bend them to obfuscate the truth. So, for example, there was a rule that the SEC was considering where you wouldn't have to publish your longs anymore on the same frequency. To me, that's nuts. I think that actually, we live in a world where your longs and your shorts should be published in real time. Because again, what separates you should be your analysis and your interpretation of the facts, not obfuscation. Another thing is that I think that you should be, forced to disclose the margin that you're running and how much leverage you have. And, I think that hedge funds and banks are no different. They're a critical part of the financial infrastructure. They should be treated in the same way. And instead, I think after 2007 and 8, a lot of the risk effectively, quote unquote, went off balance sheet and away from the banks and towards these other really important actors, but who just don't have that much oversight. I still think hedge funds will do really well. I still think that there are some folks who are incredibly talented who will make just a ton of money for themselves and for their investors. But I think disclosure needs to go up. In terms of short selling, I buy the fact that it's an important part of the market. I'm not a huge fan of it. I do think that certain folks really use it to run a neutral strategy. And, I think that that's great. But I also think that, now in the world of social media, and we've seen this recently, disinformation can be used to not just cause political damage, but I think disinformation can also cause economic damage. And so I think that the SEC is going to have to deal with that issue and figure that out. How do we manage information or interpretation or sensationalizing of things that all of a sudden can whipsaw the markets up and down? And these actors, how are they regulated? Are they allowed to just say whatever they want and the implications are what they are? Or is there a higher standard now that there's so much distribution for so many more people? And, I come to very quick conclusions. But also sometimes I'm emotional and those conclusions are more judgments. And then I take a step back, and I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of people around me that question what I said and push back, and then I re-underwrite. And it's not dissimilar to an investment. I try to come to a very quick point of view, but then I get data and I constantly re-underwrite. And, then the heat of the moment passes, deal heat or, emotional judgment. And then what's left is a sober assessment of the truth and facts. And, that's sort of where I am now on this. And frankly, most of the things that I do. Trading
is a healthy thing on balance?
I think that it should be allowed to exist. You use the word healthy. I think it's healthy? Not particularly, because I think it keeps people in this ghetto of being labor. I started as a day trader effectively, meaning on the side, I would speculate in my teens and in my 20s. An investor is not a speculator and it's not a day trader. And I think that a lot of retail, a lot of normal people, the only way they will close the inequality gap is because they take it upon themselves to learn how to become an investor. The government's not going to save them. No law is going to save them. No, taxation of the rich is going to save them. They can save themselves. And you have to learn how to invest, which is to put money into the things you care about and then do nothing. And learning that second part is super hard. And so if you have apps that glorify speculation, you're not going to teach the right kind of behavior. So of course they should exist. I believe in a free market.